Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I am Samuel Reyes, your host for the English 100 talk show slash podcast. I'm joined today with former students of the English 100 class, Cassidy, Paige, and McKenna, who are all here to talk about what they enjoyed and what they learned during the semester. Can we get a little background on our students here? Let's start with Paige. How are you, Paige? What did you like about the class?
I'm good. I really liked kind of getting back to basics as far as English composition goes. I'd been out of school for a few years, so it's really
Mm.
nice that I was able to have that opportunity to have a good foundation. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, welcome back to college, Cassidy, what about you?
I just like English in general. I think it was a really good first step for my first semester for college, and I enjoyed most of the topics discussed in the class.
You like English, huh?
I do.
I don't think I've ever heard someone say that so confidently. So, I mean, good for you. Are you going to be a writer? What are you thinking about being when you're older, when you graduate?
I mean, I've definitely thought of the idea, but there's no specific route
Okay,
towards
okay.
it.
Very cool. What about you, McKenna?
I also like English. I was actually supposed to take originally a higher English course than this, but I thought I'd start lower so that I could get ready for it. And I've turned out to really enjoy this class, and especially the books that we've read throughout it. I think that they
Yeah,
have really important topics in them.
yeah, they were all really interesting. I was in the class as well. There was a lot of, including Dear America. Dear America, oh my gosh, it was such a perspective to see because just like being not an immigrant but a fourth generation immigrant, like seeing someone else's perspective on the matter, like it's like seeing like what my grandpa could have told me when he came over. It was really really interesting stuff. I enjoyed the class as well. I'm not really a fan of English or anything, but I'll definitely need to know how to write papers because I do want to be a therapist when I grow up. I'm gonna have a lot of data to be putting on paper in the future. But yeah, now that we got the pleasantries out of the way, let's start with Paige. Paige, what did you come to talk about? Like what part or what did you learn in English 100 that really like caught your eye? Like what was your favorite part?
I think my favorite part about English 100 was reading Dear America, like you mentioned
Mm,
earlier. It's interesting. I actually am a first generation immigrant. I was born in Germany and
really?
yeah, yeah, and my mom's German and I moved here when I was a little kid and it's so interesting to think about how different my experience has been because nobody ever assumes that, I'm an immigrant because I'm white and I've had, I have US citizenship. That has never been an issue in my life. And just reading about Jose Vargas's perspective and all of the obstacles that he ran into being undocumented, it's such an interesting reality check and definitely provides a lot of perspective that I never had.
Yeah, I'm sure you can relate on some fronts though. Are there anything that you were able to like relate to with Vargas while reading it, being a first generation immigrant?
Yeah, I relate to having, like an immigrant, caretaker who doesn't know exactly, the systems that are in play. It's interesting because I actually come from a very conservative family. My dad is very conservative, so growing
Mm,
up, I heard a lot of like really bad rhetoric when it comes to like undocumented immigrants and their role in American society. And there was always this narrative of, oh well, your mom did everything right in this, and then reading this book and also just having friends
mm.
who are undocumented really it was really a really interesting life lesson that it's not easy
Yeah.
to be legal, and especially if you come here when you're 10 years old. And in the book, he has to like stay in the Philippines for 10 years and then come back before he's even considered for citizenship. So it's
Wow.
just yeah, it's things are so different, coming from my background to like a lot of other people's backgrounds, including Jose.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to like see the kind of ignorance, like the perception that people have of illegal immigration is just like people from Central America crawling under a fence, right? Which really isn't at all what the immigration policies are kind of trying to combat, or what illegal immigration looks like. And I know you know firsthand, like the more depth of like the details between like who is the demographic that actually is coming here legally and why it's so difficult to come here legally, you know?
Yeah. I mean, actually, like when I first picked up the book, I thought Jose Vargas was from like Mexico or Central
So did I.
America, just given the name. Yeah. And then in the book, I learned that a lot of people who come here undocumented, they are usually of like Asian or Pacific Islander descent. So
Mm,
that was an interesting fact that I learned, because you think about the perception that the U.S. media puts out about who is the illegal immigrant, and it's not the case in a lot of
mm.
situations.
If you haven't stated before, what was the biggest takeaway from reading that piece of literature? What is different from you now than you before you read that book?
I mean, in given we live in the Trump presidency, I've always been super liberal since I like grew up and left the house, but
Mm,
I didn't realize that there were so many inequities, and some people, like Jose, he had to lie about his immigration status, and if you take that at face value, you're like, oh, that's a bad thing, you shouldn't lie on a job application. But the more that you get to know his story, the more you kind of see these gray areas in life. And reading this book has taught me that things aren't always as black and white as they seem.
definitely. Well, thank you for sharing. That was really enlightening. And I'm definitely going to take a second read at Dear America as well. And I think everybody else should. Um, Moving on, Cassidy, it says here that you studied fallacies and you found that a lot interesting during learning in English 100 or English, yeah, English 100. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, I chose fallacies first off because I've never heard of fallacies up
Mm,
to this point. I don't think it's a talked about topic when it comes to English.
yeah.
So the first couple things are like, what is a fallacy? A fallacy is a use of invalid or otherwise faulty reasoning or wrong
Mm,
moves in the construction of an argument. It's essentially like appears to be better than what it really is. Often people use fallacies to mislead people or to trick them to believe something that isn't necessarily true.
mm.
Some examples of that would be a slippery slope, red herring, ad hominem, false dilemma, a bunch of other stuff.
Those are some creative nicknames for the different types of fallacies. So like they're categorized in a certain way, obviously, but like how are they categorized? Is it just like the figure of speech that they're using to create the fallacy, or like how do you decipher between the two or the many?
I mean, I guess it kind of depends. Like when you read ad hominem, you don't necessarily know what that means, but when you say like appeal to authority, it's kind of obvious what they're talking about
Mm,
in a sense if you really think about it. Also, like, let's see, false dilemma, that could be guessed upon, I suppose. Um, but for example, ad hominem, it's essentially attacking the person. So when you see an advertisement or a post of some sort, it could be like, for example, a face cream. If Kim Kardashian is promoting that or something, someone could say like, oh, that face cream can't be good because Kim Kardashian is selling it because
mm,
she's supposedly fake and has some work done. So you never actually know if it's true on what she's selling. Also, for appeal to authority, it's basically accepting a truth on blind faith because someone you admire said it. So, my personal example would be if Dylan O'Brien were to say unicorns live in New York City, I'd probably believe him because he is my celebrity crush and I admire him. So,
mm.
it's a lot of the like what you would assume to be true, I suppose.
Ah, I see, I see. Have you ever like incidentally used a fallacy and you didn't even know you were using it?
I mean, I'm sure I have. There's definitely probably been a time. It's just like I didn't know because I didn't know what fallacies were until now.
Mm,
And there's so many.
a really popular fallacy that I've heard a couple times before is bandwagon. You know, people talk about bandwagon all the time. The first time I heard it, we were talking about the Golden State Warriors. The Splash Brothers were in their prime, and people were like, "You only like the Golden State Warriors because it's a bandwagon." You know, can you like go into depth about bandwagons and like kind of what it means to be a bandwagon or to join one?
Bandwagon is, so for people that don't know, it's a proposition claimed to be true or good solely because many people believe it to be so. So, example, like you said, sports. Another example would be bands or music. Typically, people like a lot of the same stuff other people like just because it's popular,
Hmm.
or they think that it's cool and they want to be cool too. Or if it's like a diet, for example, like if all my friends are on a low carb diet and they're losing weight, then I could only assume like, oh, that's the only way you can lose weight. So I'm gonna hop on that bandwagon and do what they're doing because I think that's what I should be doing and it's cool. It
Hmm.
works.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of bandwagons then, don't you, huh?
Yeah, I do.
I think one example of a bandwagon that I experienced is back in like 20 something, I don't know, it was way back in the day, back when TikTok first came out. I was on
Mhm.
it. It was super funny. I was on TikTok when it first came out because I saw like a bunch of funny videos that I really liked. And all of my friends were just like, TikTok is gross. TikTok is dumb. It's
Yeah,
not as good as
same.
Vine, that kind of stuff. And now all of my friends are religiously on TikTok. And it's the funniest
Constantly
shit
trending
ever.
stuff.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I was a forerunner for this. Like, why now you like it? What the hell? You made fun of me. You gave me shit for it. You know, that kind of stuff.
I mean, yeah,
That
it
and
definitely
anime.
grew though. It
What was
was,
that?
I feel like people thought it was mainly like a cringy app for like
Mm.
young teenagers, but I think the app has definitely grown to a point where people do think it's a better app now.
Yeah, it's like how Vine used to be. Everybody was on Vine, you know. It
Yeah,
became a thing, and then Twitter bought it out, and there's TikTok. You know,
yeah.
it's super funny. Well, thank you for talking about fallacies for a bit. Our next guest, McKenna. What did you want to come and talk about? What about English 100 did you learn that really like kind of grabbed you? You know.
Personally for me, for English 100, I really, really enjoyed America Now. I find it really intriguing, all of the entries, and especially the entries related to the prison system.
The prison system. What about the entries and the prison system that like kind of grabbed your attention or made you really want to like talk about it today?
Well, I have family members that are in the prison system, and one or two of the entries within the chapter 8 talked about why they re-enter so frequently and about life in the hold. And I found those really, really interesting because I have family members who have re-entered the prison system multiple times. You know, you can only really go in 3 offenses before it's life. And the hold is definitely something that really interested me because my family would never like it was a thing to be shamed. So they didn't really talk about it. My mom especially was not interested in me knowing anything about it. But in chapter 8, there was an entry called The Storm by Elijah Pachelk, and he was actually a prisoner and he was in the hold. And he talked about how it felt and how lonely it was and isolated. And um, he talked about what he saw through his window. And you don't really have windows in the hold. They're like very high up and very small. You can
Mm,
like see them if you stand up on the bed. And the only view he had was of down below the office where prisoners would get in trouble and they'd have to stay there until they would be called in and be questioned for the issue that arose with them. And if you were not obedient, there was a table that they could strap you down on. And prison guards have a record for not being the best people.
mm,
There was that psychology uh paper written about it. There was that experiment where they had people become prison guards and people become prisoners, and you could see very nice people change into very bad people very quickly when they were like became prison guards. So it's sort of the environment where you are above these other people because they did something bad. So you feel empowered and you like take over that power and you abuse it.
I
And he talked
see.
about how if you did something bad and you kept doing bad things, then you could be taken into this room, you could be strapped down, and the prison guards could beat you until you've absolutely given up.
Mhm.
And he compared it to being a caged animal, like just a wild animal that they stuck into a cage, which is essentially what they are. Humans are like beasts. We can be uh, like animals in ways, and in a prison system is a cage. So I felt that was really eye-opening to see the inside perspective on that issue.
Mhm. And how does that, so was that a personal experience with a family member, or is that what you read in the assigned assignment?
That was what I read. It
Mm,
was from Elijah Peshelk, and he entitled it "The Storm" because there was a storm going outside, and he was comparing what he was seeing in the office to a scene that was happening outside with an eagle. And I
oh,
think it was like meant to signify the eagle as America and like it circling the mouse being like the prisoners
I
and the
see.
storm being the environment around them.
Mm, okay, really quickly, how did reading that relate to your home life? Did you feel that some of your family members might have been experiencing what this prison mate was, or do you see it as like more or less an exaggeration? Is it true? What is your perception about the prison system?
I think some prisons could like very potentially be like that just because we've seen it before in like out of state, like out of country prisons that have been monitored by Americans. And I've definitely seen, I'm very interested in the system and how it works and everything. So I'd watch a lot of documentaries, and there are definitely prisons out there that would do things like that. And it was just really personal for me because my brother was in the hold for 7 months. So I was thinking that he was probably feeling the same things that Elijah explained he was feeling. And I don't know. It's just when know people that are in there, and you read something like that that relates to it, it can make you feel very emotional.
Yeah, definitely, I can see that. Um, well, thank you guys for coming on. Real quick, would you recommend the class? Would you recommend English 100? How was the professor? How was like doing the work? Like, what was it like for you? Let's go ahead and start with Paige, just real quick.
Yeah, I believe that Dr. Catania was very thorough in giving feedback in our essays. I really being able to get constructive criticism, and I feel like she really pushed me to create better papers throughout our Zoom lessons. The content that we discussed, it wasn't boring at all. Like I really was
Mm.
interested in Dear America, and to kind of piggyback off of what McKenna said, America Now had a lot of interesting, relevant articles. So it was a really great way to keep the class engaged.
Yeah, I completely agree. What about you, Cassidy?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend this class. I think it has a lot of the basics that you would need for English. I also do really like the mini essays we had, and some of the like shorter paragraphs essays that we had I really thought were interesting and like gave us our chance to write about something that we want to write about. And that's a big thing for myself, is writing about something that I feel passionate about.
Yeah, same here, same here. It definitely helps writing like a huge 500,000 page essay when you're really into the subject, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Mm. What about you, McKenna? Any summary of the course, or would you recommend it? How is the professor?
I would absolutely recommend it, and I would also recommend Dr. Catania because uh, even with the pandemic going on, just like before it, we had life and we
Mhm,
still have just life, these
mhm,
issues that come up. And she was very forgiving when stuff would go on in my personal life and I couldn't get to things immediately. And she would give me that extra time that I needed. So I really appreciated that. And I found all of the material that she gave us, like all of the books, so important for us to read, especially as just like teenagers or like newly adults that live in America, because like it touched on a lot of important topics that we don't really talk about in our day-to-day lives.
Definitely. Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on here. It was great to hear the feedback, and I guess it's a resounding yes for anyone who would like to take the course. It's a great one. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been our first and last episode of English 100 Discussed. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.